Hey guys, Zeteo here. Today we're looking at some more Alpha Cup casting. We've reached the end, the grand finals between XFactor and Autopilots. XFactor has dropped only a single game this entire time against Rexel in the round of 4. Meanwhile, Autopilots got knocked down to the losers brackets, losing to Blodier, and then crawled his way back up through the losers bracket into the grand finals, taking out people such as Rexel and facing off against Blodier once again, taking him out in the losers finals. This will be a best of 3 for the grand finals, but since XFactor has not lost a set yet, he will get an extra game if it gets that far. So let's get into it.
Game started.
All right, we have XFactor under the name of Darth Revan spawned as our blue Armada player at the bottom right. At the top left, we have Autopilot spawned as our red Armada player. This is Onyx Cauldron. Now this map is interesting. It can be a little bit difficult. There aren't a ton of mexes, and the mexes that are out are a little bit more along the sides of the map, right? We got stuff like that there, and then you got a big pocket in this cavern here with only 2 ways in. So this can be really, really important so that players control their part of the cavern, because there are a lot of mexes in there. Let's see how these players are opening. Looks like we got, a bot lab from XFactor actually decides not to go for a third mex, just getting a bot lab after 2 mexes there, 2 wins being substantial or, really, really high here, deciding doesn't need a third win before that bot lab, with it being so high. Autopilot, meanwhile, going with the 2 win as well, but does have 3 mexes online here. So opening now with Lazarus to start reclaiming some of those trees. A nice little way to get some extra energy. Meanwhile, it looks like XFactor doing the same thing. Has a Lazarus out, now has a Khan out. Probably going to be sending it to grab that third mex, yeah. And then moving on to building some more mexes. Radar, very important, being queued up. Want to make sure that you, have that information of what's coming towards your base as soon as possible so that you can react to it in due time. All right, ticks are coming out now. A couple for XFactor coming down the line here. Note that they are split up. One going down the center on this side, the other one going around the lake here. Just to, make sure that he's, covering his bases, making sure that he knows what's coming towards him. Lots of ticks coming out here from Autopilot. These ticks, are definitely a good way to open up here. Just get that scouting information and help shut down, potential attacks. We do see a lot of pawns coming out here, though, from XFactor. And these pawns are going to be able to clean up these ticks. Possibly going to be able to, move towards the base. But Autopilot does have some pawns of his own ready and waiting for those pawns to reach his base. But yeah, very importantly, lots of scouting going on. These pawns aren't just moving directly to, the enemy. They're looking around. They're looking for ticks. The ticks are looking around, trying to get some information as well. There's a tick in the back of XFactor's base, but gets taken out by these pawns. I should note there is a little bit of metal in some of these crystals, some of the bigger crystals. So another reason to have that's Resbot out collecting that. It's not much, but it's enough to give you little bits, maybe an extra pawn eventually, stuff like that. A couple of mexes get taken out here. Autopilot not quite having his units in the right position to defend those mexes. And also just not having a radar. That radar is certainly a big deal. If you don't have it by this time, the spawns can get in, can do some damage like that. XFactor, still doesn't have his own, but it is queued up after this mex. But yeah, XFactor laying down a lot of pressure here with all these pawns. But he's got to be really careful. You don't want your pawns sticking out like that. You don't want to take that extra damage like that. Pawns fighting here on the other side of things as well. But it looks like a fairly even trade. But the wreck is on Autopilot's side, so he should be able to pick that up eventually. Resbot picked up that Khan that died over here. Probably going to be picking up those mexes afterwards. And then, yeah, bit of engagement. Looks like, XFactor trying to get in there, do some damage, but no dice so far. And, so far there's been a lot of aggression. Now this aggression, you know, is on Autopilot side of the map for the most part. So the Rex will go to him eventually, you know, as he's able to work up enough res bots out here to, you know, start putting some guys out there. But XFactor, you know, still laying down a lot of pressure here. There's a lot of pawns coming in here from the other side, and you know, he's going to be able to clean these up, and some of those Rex he might be able to get to since they're in the middle of the map here. But yeah, with all these pawns out, I'm not sure if you know, if Autopilot, he's struggling a little bit, but I mean, I think he has enough pawns out here to defend for now. Radar going up on the side, he desperately needs that because yeah, you definitely want to know, you know, what's coming towards you. And yeah, especially on this right-hand side, if he's not going to have units there, you know, having that radar spot for stuff so that you can send stuff over eventually. Meanwhile, middle of the map looks like it's being contested, or starting to be contested here a little bit. You know, 5 pawns out here from either side. Resbot out doing what they can. Meanwhile, the pawns actually get in the back here once again. You know, Autopilot not having that radar up, you know, to see where those pawns are coming up until just recently. And, you know, these pawns get in the back. They're going for the resbot. They take out the resbot. That's certainly a big deal. Having to produce another resbot to, like, pick up the con, pick up, you know, the resurrector that's dead, you know, it's certainly going to send him a little bit further behind even, just because that's not a unit he's making. That's a resbot. And they cost quite a bit more metal than a pawn. So, you know, he's going to be down a couple pawns because of it. So XFactor here in a very good position, but Autopilot is trying to you know, do some damage back on XFactor as well. You know, he can certainly take out these mechs. No pawns in position, but I think that's going to be about it as these you know, other pawns come in to defend. Meanwhile, a bit of a stalemate in the area close to Autopilot's base, as both these players have plenty of pawns. Usually fights like that go to the defending player, the player that has the radar vision, that's able to take a better engagement because they know exactly where the units are of your opponent and how many and whatnot. So certainly, you know, XFactor's being very careful with that upper position here. But yeah, the bottom location here also, you know, cleaning that up. Probably going to get the resbot over here to, you know, start resurrecting some of those guys as well. He does have a second resbot out. He's going to be moving it over there to do that a little bit faster. And I think Autopilot's basically stabilized a bit, but, you know, he's still down a little bit on you know, income here. Because of this little pocket expansion that XFactor has on this side. Even having a radar and LT protect it, and the con moving forward to start grabbing those mechs on the side. I am curious to know when and if some of these you know, commanders are going to be moving away from their base. I think with how the metal works out here, since there isn't a lot in the middle, you know, players maybe elect to keep their commander in their base boosting a little bit longer than normal. But yeah, eventually, you know, going into the cavern here is usually how we see commanders move out and start grabbing mexes, because that area, again, is so important. But yeah, XFactor really, like, going hard on these pawns. Just lots of pawns coming out here. No tech switches or anything like that. Just, you know, doing a lot of pawns to try to secure and contain Autopilot here, you know, as he expands a little bit more freely. And I think XFactor's taken, you know, enough good engagements early on here so that he should be in a bit of a better position. And so now he's just kind of hanging back, making sure that he's not just, like, overcommitting to something and, you know, losing a bunch of Rex that can be just resurrected and whatnot. So, you know, certainly a really safe play here after doing some substantial damage early on. Autopilot doing a little bit of scouting, sees that this area is already taken. He needs to be concerned about all that. Looks like Autopilot, you know, he has this con out here trying to expand, but there's so many pawns in this area. Was that? Yeah, that was a GG. Autopilot just realizes, like, okay, with the loss of that con, and with the con over on the right side for XFactor, you know, moving forward, grabbing expansions, it's just, you know, he realizes how behind he is, and it's just too much. All right, so let's load into game number 2 here. I gotta load it up. Let's see here. Nice little quick game there between these two, you know, top level players. But I think, you know, XFactor just did too good of a job getting into Autopilot's base, taking out that con earlier. You know, taking out the Resbot and stuff later as well, like certainly puts Autopilot behind. Makes it very difficult because you need to then make the choice between, you know, do I build another Resbot, do I build a con, or do I build units? And you kind of need to do all three, but each time you choose one of those, you're not doing one of the other things. So you're just kind of setting yourself behind in those other aspects of the game. And yeah, XFactor just being able to keep his Resbot alive, able to put on more and more pressure and continue to expand freely with that con surviving, certainly helps out a lot. All right, let's get into our second game here. This is game
started.
2. XFactor spawned at the bottom right as our blue Armada player. And we have Autopilot spawned in the center as our red Armada player. This is the Eye of Horus. Very much a bot-favored map. I do want to talk about these starting locations for sure, because there is a very big difference between the two. So Eye of Horus here, you know, has all these mountains around that bots can actually traverse to some of these like lower points in the mountains. And that can make it very difficult to defend a middle position like this. You know, it takes running around in the back, harassing this mech here, harassing this mech on the side, you know, can certainly do a lot of damage. And then if you're not careful, you know, you're stuck on 2 mechs then if you don't defend those locations. You know, so that can be very, very tricky here. But having a middle location here does allow him to send a con over to the left and to the right pretty easily and quickly. So just a bit of a trade-off there between those two different, you know, styles. You know, XFactor here, with being in a more corner position, you know, really only has to worry about, you know, the mountains on this side and then his frontal angle. So it's, you know, and also as being in the corner, it's like you only have that 90-degree angle to worry about. So yeah, a little bit safer for him. But yeah, anyways, it looks like, you know, XFactor going with a couple of early cons actually. Usually I see a lot of ticks and pawns to start on this map. You know, Autopilot already has 4 ticks on the map, you know, looking for where XFactor has spawned. Just now, you know, adding on a couple of cons, you know, trying to get that production going. And this is certainly a map where we see commanders stay in the base a lot longer, you know, simply because you have, you know, these big mexes. These mexes are almost, like, they're 2.9, so that's almost 3, which is, you know, 50, of course, like 50% more than, like, a strong mex. So each mex is very, very important. You know, and, you know, it's really important to be able to keep cranking out units, and you certainly have the economy for it, you know, with the bigger mexes. So, you know, commander moves out a little bit later. But yeah, pawns are now joining the production queue. Looks like this tick is going to be able to get in back here, take out this mex. Mex was self-destructed, taking out the tick. But yeah, XFactor's going to need to get another con out there to protect that. But yeah, another tick actually gets in here. These pawns are not paying attention. They take out that mex. Maybe even going to take out this constructor. No, there is a pawn on the way. He is reclaiming the tick, so I think the tick will be taken out. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, you know, XFactor does see, you know, an expanding con from Autopilot. Autopilot trying to get in the back here, do the same kind of damage, taking out this mex, but no dice. Or I should say, XFactor trying to do the damage, but Autopilot being a little too you know, being perfectly or defending really well, you know, putting units in the position. Sorry, that sounded weird. But anyways, you know, both players here, plenty of pawns out here, but you know, so far it's XFactor that's taken the damage. You know, despite being in the corner position, he took damage on that mex, and having to rebuild it and stuff has certainly put him a little bit behind. You know, he should want to have his cons out on the map, you know, expanding, not re-expanding to what you've already taken. But yeah, little bits of engagements here in the middle. XFactor with a very wide spread of pawns running around, probably going to you know, group them together when he decides that there's a big enough threat to do so. But yeah, just like trying to find, you know, trying to spread him out so that he can spread out the damage he deals. There is a pawn in the back here trying to take out this con, but there are plenty of pawns to defend. Now, in case you're wondering, you know, it is certainly possible for one pawn to take out a con, you know, when there's already defenders there. You know, simply because pawns cannot shoot through friendly units. So, you know, using your pawn in between, or using that con to be in between their pawns and yours, you know, while you deal damage to that con, can certainly still take it out. But yeah, radar very important on this map. We do see a frontal radar for Autopilot. Radar on the right-hand side as well in the hills here, so that's certainly going to help out with that. But I don't see a radar for these hills here. You know, so this is certainly a tricky thing to deal with. If you don't remember that there's like enemy units in that location, they can certainly run around that area quite a bit. Looks like, you know, Autopilot going to be losing a con there. Certainly a big deal to be losing that. You know, XFactor actually took some damage as well, losing the mexes in the back. So he's down on, he's stuck on 2 mexes right now. Needs to get some cons back over there to re-expand. Just trying to do the damage back to Autopilot, but Autopilot, you know, setting up a really nice set of defenses here. You know, keeping things alive for the most part. I mean, he did lose a constructor, but already has a couple of replacements. So I think Autopilot here sitting a lot better than XFactor at the moment. XFactor just not doing quite as good of a job defending, despite being, again, in the corner position where it's a little bit easier to defend. Maybe relying on the corner position a little bit too much. Yeah, Autopilot being very careful, has some pawns on the left. You know, making sure that this con does not just die to, you know, a couple of pawns. XFactor maybe realizing that he's on the back foot here. He sees how many pawns are out from Autopilot on the right-hand side. He's got to be really careful at this point. He really needs to make sure that these cons stay alive. In fact, this one should be re-expanding down here. Pawn doing a little bit of scouting, sees the radar up there. A couple of them moving in the back, though. Autopilot probably seen them with the radar before they got up to that crater there. So yeah, responding perfectly with all these pawns to defend. So yeah, I mean, at this point, it's like XFactor needs to do some damage here. He needs to like take out some cons to get back in this game. But you know, Autopilot knows this. He's defending really well, making sure that he's not you know, spending too much awareness / APM attacking, and just making sure he has plenty of units out here to defend various locations, defend these cons on the left and right side. And, you know, at this point, you know, as soon as the left-hand side gets established here with like an LLT or something like that and some radar, you know, Autopilot's going to be in a pretty good position as long as he can get, you know, as long as he has units stationed around and defenses in place. You know, I think this middle position has basically paid off at that point. You know, he's able to more freely expand because there's expansions on both sides of him. There are some pawns coming in here. They are going to take out a lot of these pawns. Self-D on the mexes. Unfortunately, the self-D takes out a lot of the wind turbines for XFactor. Whoops. I mean, some of that might have been damage from you know, enemy fire, but I think at that point, XFactor says, okay, that's just too much, and GG's.
Battle ended.
Interesting game 2 here. It's definitely not going to be a walk. It's not going to be XFactor just dominating this game. Autopilot is fighting back. All right, so let's load up our game number 3 here. And I think this automatically means that there's like a extra game if XFactor wins this next one. I mean, it should, because yeah, it would be game 3 already. But yeah, the score is 1-1. Let's see, did I do this right? Hold on, sorry. Okay, I'm just checking stuff. Don't mind me. We are getting into game number 3 here.
Game started.
All right, so we have XFactor spawned as our blue Armada player on the right-hand side. And we have Autopilot spawned as our red Armada player. Both these players playing a lot of Armada today. And this is Heartbreak Hill. You may recognize this as a StarCraft 1 map. But yeah, it's a pretty popular Beyond All Reason map as well. And looking at the starting builds here, Autopilot going for 3 mexes as an opener. 2 wins so far, adding on that 3rd mex. XFactor, meanwhile, starting with 2 mechs, is looking like he's going to put down a factory pretty soon here, but wind is a little bit low, so just working up a little bit more wind turbines before doing so. Just for the record, you want something around 65 energy income before you put down a bot lab, simply because that's how much it drains about 60, as it's being built by your commander. So that's usually a good rule of thumb, that you don't want less than that. No matter how the wind is, you want to just reach that number before putting it down. But yeah, both players here building that lab. Autopilot, ended up building a solar with the wind being as low as it was. But that's going to mean that he's a little bit lower on his starting metal starting metal amounts here. But he does have that quicker third mechs to work with. So I think he'll be just fine with that solar there. And also, it's a pretty good idea on this map. The wind doesn't really go terribly high, which means the average wind is lower. And he's probably going to want that solar eventually anyways. So, but yeah, we'll see how these players continue to open. We do have a couple of cons out here for XFactor. Just looking for to hasten his expansion, since he didn't take that third mech as quickly. So so he has that second con out a little bit sooner. And Autopilot, kind of doing the same thing, just kind of playing a more macro game, getting up a couple of cons to expands. And this is certainly the map for it, right? Because, there are a lot of expansions that are kind of clustered in various areas. Like, for example, you have a cluster of mechs in this area and a cluster of mechs up here, but not a lot in the middle, not a lot in the center. So, and not really a lot in your base. So, you want to move your cons out sooner than later, so that you can get them into those pockets where there's more mechs. And at the same time, you're pretty far from your opponent typically, so you don't have to really worry about insane aggression or something like that, especially for these players that are going to be able to run around the map with ticks and spot everything coming towards them, and they have a faster response time than your typical player. So certainly going to be each player is going to be scouting and seeing what's going on. This tick looking like he's going to get back here, might be able to get this mechs. This is certainly going to be a big deal. The starting mechs especially are a big deal, because every time you take one out, you have to bring another con over to retake it, and it's a really big deal. Actually, there's a con that goes down here as well. XFactor doing a fantastic job with the harassment so far, and he's even going to get another mechs here, and he's going for the other con. This would be insane amounts of damage already, but at this, oh wow, he does lose the con. That's, oh man. All right, so Autopilot is certainly hurting here. Yeah, Autopilot's very much hurting here. But XFactor, taking a little bit of damage too. He does take out that tick with the self-D on the mechs. Let's see here. What are the mechs counts at? I mean, we got 5 for XFactor. Meanwhile, over here, we have only 3 for Autopilot. That's, oh man. So he's picking up this mechs. He certainly needs to get another con out to start expanding some more, because he doesn't even have enough metal to produce the con. This is insane damage so far, but he's got to be very, very careful. He can't lose any more infrastructure. He just can't afford it if he's going to try to play this game out. And he needs to deal some damage back. Oh, okay, he manages to save this resbot. If he didn't take that out, that would have been probably GG if he lost that. But yeah, XFactor doing the same thing, a little bit more ahead, but there is a tick over here. Maybe this tick can I would be going for this con for sure, right? Oh, unfortunately, a little bit too close to that mechs, and the mechs takes it out as it dies. But yeah, XFactor in a bit of a better position here, but Autopilot does have more units out at the moment. There's plenty of pawns coming towards XFactor, but XFactor can be able to maybe see this ahead of time if he moves some of these pawns around, and that's going to give him time, or maybe he's going to spend more of his resources on producing pawns to defend that. Yeah, he certainly knows that there's plenty of pawns out here at the moment, and this is what Autopilot's going to need. He needs to try to shut down some of these expansions while also trying to expand himself, which means he's going to need to send a lot of his units across the map to lay down that pressure. And then just, try to get away with as minimal of a defense as he can. But yeah, so far, I guess he's decided instead to play it really safe. He has a couple of pawns you know, moving back to defend, trying to make sure that he doesn't overextend. There's self-D on this LT. He's going to take out this con. Okay, takes out the con. That's definitely, you know, going to help him get back in this game. You know, slowing that down, certainly a big deal, but he's taking a little bit more damage on this other side here. He does lose Lazarus. He's going to lose that Mex in the back once again. And this is hurting quite a bit. You know, so XFactor has 2 cons out expanding at the moment. You know, Autopilot has 2 as well. And if we look at the army value, it's basically even, with XFactor being just slightly ahead here. But there are some pawns here in the back of Autopilot's base, taking out a couple of those wind turbines. He's going to be okay with that for now, though. He doesn't really need that. But yeah, it's going to be annoying having to rebuild that a little bit later as well. Another pawn comes out here for on XFactor's side of the map. Going for this con, not going to get it. So XFactor, you know, actually sitting here with, is it 3? No, it's just two cons out here still. He does have a lot of Lazarus running around, picking up another constructor, so that will be 3 in a moment. And yeah, I mean, Autopilot doing a nice job with defense, but at the same time, he kind of needs to slow down the expansion, I feel. Maybe he feels like he's done enough damage. And yeah, he's got to be really careful. There's an LT protecting this con. Okay, the con was moving away for a moment, but is going to be returning to the safety of the LT and adding on these mexes here. But yeah, just now getting another con out to retake these expansions in the back. And, you know, again, XFactor is still slightly ahead here. Even getting to build a radar on this, you know, high ground position here, very important. You know, this radar being higher up allows you to see onto this ridge here a little bit. And it allows you to see, like, on top of here, too. Makes it very, very important for, you know, protecting these expansions as you continue out. Actually, Autopilot's able to do the same thing. I'm surprised he has a con all the way out there. He does have 3 cons out here expanding now. XFactor just added on a 3rd con for himself, but it might be in trouble here. He decides to move it back. The pawns that are popping out are going to be able to defend it, so I think he'll be fine. But they are moving towards his back location. Maybe going to be able to get this con. If he takes out this con, that's certainly a big deal. He certainly needs that. The con does go down. Meanwhile, there are some more attacks on Autopilot's side of the map. Yeah, so he's lost that con at the bottom, I believe. Actually, no. Looks like these are all pawns. So he got the con back to safety here. And he's going to be re-expanding there in a moment. But yeah, looking at the con counts, you know, it's 3 for Autopilot still. So he's managed to keep them alive so far. Even putting up a radar on this high ground to, you know, be able to see stuff coming from this direction here. And yeah, I mean, I think Autopilot's kind of done it, actually. You know, looking at the expansion count, taking out that 3rd con in the bottom here has certainly helped him out here. But yeah, looking at it, the game's pretty much like even right now. You know, anything can happen. You know, Autopilot was on the back foot there for a moment, but, you know, was able to lay down enough pressure to take out a con, you know, get out enough cons for himself while keeping them alive, and that's really what you got to do to get yourself back in the game. Self-T goes down on this LT, but the pawns are no longer near them. They're going for this con over here. Autopilot can maybe take it out. That's certainly going to be a nice, maybe even an advantage if he does. He does take it out, and that leaves XFactor with just 2 cons out now. Well, I guess I should say 3. He's got 3, but one of them's in the base. Yeah, this... yeah, I guess it's just one out expanding at the moment. But he does have the res bots out. He's going to be able to pick up these cons eventually. But yeah, nice little bit of damage from Autopilot. Both players just kind of macroing up a little bit. You know, protecting their area, as both players have, you know, plenty of units out at this point, especially with the wrecks that are being picked up. But yeah, economy-wise, XFactor a bit ahead on energy. And that's, you know, not really necessary at the moment. He has plenty of energy, but at the same time, that means that as he expands his metal, he's going to be in a really good position here, you know, to continue producing a lot of units. Pawns try to get in here, try to find the con, but yeah, there's lots of defending pawns in that location. Lots of defending pawns on the bottom as well. As these units get surrounded, that's going to be a nice little win for XFactor, or for Autopilot here. More pawns on the other side. Autopilot takes a nice engagement, but at the same time, going to leave a few wrecks behind. Decides to bail before losing the rest of these pawns. Certainly a good move to keep those alive. Now, I'm curious to know when these players, if these players, decide to move away from pawns. Are we going to see anything other than pawns this game? Now, on this map, we typically see a vehicle lab on the high ground here. On the high ground so that they don't have to, slowly move across, or either move around or I forget if they can go up this hill, but if they can, it just slows you down trying to go up it with your vehicle. So, placing it on the high ground is certainly helpful. Helps them get moving forward towards your opponent a little bit quicker. Can certainly help reinforce a location a lot faster. Yeah, lots of pawns coming out down here for Autopilot. I don't know if XFactor has enough to defend this. He does have 2 cons in this corner. He's going to try to get them to hide in the corner of the map here. And yeah, XFactor is going to just concede this area here, knowing that there's more pawns coming in just above it. Is prioritizing defending that instead. But yeah, XFactor going to be able to push this away pretty easily. Lots of pawns out here just for that one location. Meanwhile, there is a split of the pawns that were up there trying to reinforce that, but yeah, I think it's too late. These are probably going to, I would think you'd want to retreat them, but I suppose, it does tax XFactor. If he's gonna move all those units up here, that's certainly weakening the position of other locations, such as this top location. Looks like the con at this top location is going to go down. He's going to take out a mech, and Autopilot now in a very good position. Despite that opener, despite it being a little bit rough early on, Autopilot doing a great job. XFactor just committing too many units to this bottom location, maybe. These are units moving away from Autopilot's base. It's not like they're threatening this location eventually. It's not like they're up here defending. So these are just going to be in the corner for a moment. And just now, after taking out all those pawns, now moving forward to, apply some pressure, perhaps. He does have a couple cons out here, though. I believe he lost the 2 in the corner. Yeah, the guys in the corner died. But he does have a couple more in this location here. I don't know what's going on here. There's certainly a pathing issue here. This is definitely not great. He's trying to expand to this location, though. So if you take this location here, set up LLTs, it makes it really hard for Autopilot to move units in from these different directions, right? And that protects these back mexes a bit more. And it makes it so that there's only really that one access point. Or makes it very difficult to push through those mexes or push through those LLTs defending the fronts, without losing a few units. Big engagement here in the center. Both players just kind of, realizing maybe that's not the best engagement. I'd rather use my units in a stronger engagement and just back up instead of trading blows here. Both players being very careful. XFactor, meanwhile, does have plenty of pawns in this location, trying to push through here, but there are 2 LLTs. So this is really just the opposite position that I was talking about down here, that Autopilot has managed to secure a bit. Does have a couple of LLTs. I'm probably going to set up a few more LLTs. The more defending this location, the harder it is to push through there. Meanwhile, those units at the bottom right finally got all the way to the left-hand side, doing some damage down here. I'm surprised that Autopilot maybe missed the... I would think after seeing so many units at the bottom left or bottom right, you'd think that they'd be headed this way, and just not have, Autopilot not having enough units to defend that location. But he does manage to keep the cons alive, so that's certainly a win for Autopilot. Going to be able to continue, rebuilding here, taking some more mexes in the corner. And, again, this is still Autopilot favored. He has, this location locked down is certainly a very big deal. And if he's able to control some of this location here, that's certainly going to push him towards more and more economy and make it very difficult for XFactor to win this game. Yeah, looking at the bases here, I don't see a transition yet, no. Just lots of pawns coming out of one factory so far. But each player is, starting to gain a bit of metal here since, pawns are building so fast at this point that, you know, you're getting diminishing returns by adding on more con turrets. You know, and moving into like a second lab or you know, just switching into vehicles can certainly help you alleviate that and have a stronger force in something like blitzes, or you know, if you decide to add on another bot lab because you'd rather have pawns, then sure, go for it. You know, having more you know, just more units eventually, since you can't spend that metal. XFactor, though, being a little bit behind, doesn't have quite that bank of metal coming in. But he is laying down some pressure. I mean, if he's able to you know, juke this army from Autopilot, he can certainly, you know, maybe pressure here. Decides instead to, well, no, it looks like he is going to go for it. I was going to say, maybe he's going to pressure this location, just get out, save those units for later. But he is going to go for it. Probably going to lose a couple of those units now. That they're actually just retreating out now. But meanwhile, at the top left here, or top right here, you know, some pawns get in the back and are taking out XFactor's position up here. You know, it's just not as well defended. And with this forward defense here from Autopilot, it's pretty easy for him to just walk some units over, you know, as the game progresses. XFactor is certainly in a maybe a worse off position here, but again, he's sending some units at this bottom location, really trying to hamper this, take out the cons when possible. But there is no radar here for Autopilot, so I believe that these pawns are going to do some damage here, especially if he keeps moving his army forward. And yeah, I mean, Autopilot, you know, certainly has the income advantage, but XFactor, you know, picking up those, or I should say, resurrecting those units that were on his side has certainly allowed him to, you know, have some more of a standing army at this point. You know, just more units being picked up here. So XFactor finally doing a transition here, going into an air lab, not a vehicle lab. It is on the high ground here. I'm not sure if it doesn't really matter, but it looks like that's where his space, where available space is. And yeah, I wonder if this is going to be bombing or if it's going to be Banshee. And I would think that at this point, with players being so good about spreading out their wind turbines and stuff, that it would probably be Banshees to just threaten those, you know, outlying mexes and make it very difficult for, you know, for Autopilot to potentially defend it. But yeah, no transition here from Autopilot. Has apparently spent his metal. I'm not sure if that just means he added on another concert suspended or what, but he's getting through it now. And yeah, just, you know, Autopilot doing a nice job pushing XFactor away. Meanwhile, that bottom location was taken out. The cons were taken out. I believe these were probably also sent to take out the Rex. No, the Rex are here, the two cons. So those can be picked up. They weren't denied. But yeah, I think it's and with this air coming out, I think XFactor maybe can lay down some pressure here, and, you know, in a second way where, you know, he can initially take out some mexes and then force Autopilot to, you know, respond with air eventually to take out the Banshees. But you know, in the meantime, there might be some damage done. But yeah, unfortunately, XFactor needing to use the Banshees for defense here, as these pawns get into the back of the base here, doing some damage. A little bit of infrastructure damage, but you know, overall, really not that much of their economy at this point, since both players have grown quite large. There are a group of pawns here taking out this location here. Unfortunately, the Resbots are here, probably going to be found and cleaned up here. Meanwhile, there's another attack on Autopilot's side of things, with these XFactor trying to trade blows here. You know, saying, if you're going to damage my base, I want to damage your base as well. So yeah, just going to get a little bit of damage here, maybe take out this mech and a few wind turbines, but this is going to be cleaned up easily enough. Meanwhile, Autopilot trying to do some damage as well. Lots of pawns coming in here again. But yeah, with all these Banshees here supporting and, you know, pawns defending, I think Autopilot's forces are probably just going to be cleaned up here, leaving behind quite a few wrecks. But I don't know, maybe he can afford to. You know, he certainly still has an income advantage with that top center location. But yeah, some of his base also going down to XFactor as these guys kind of trade blows. But yeah, base damage really isn't all that significant sometimes, because that's where the majority of your build power is. So, like, you know, it's pretty easy to just send a couple cons over, retake those mexes, rebuild some wind. You know, even same thing with these mexes. Like, sure, they're down right now, but it's pretty easy to get units over there to pick them back up. But yeah, for now, XFactor choosing instead to use his APM, you know, to harass, to try to keep himself alive. Fighters are coming out here. They are going to go after the Banshees, but there are some defending fighters for XFactor. And yeah, I think taking very minimal damage on these Banshees so far. But yeah, it looks like there are a bit more fighters for Autopilot. So, you know, going to be able to threaten this, but at the same time, it is a little bit more difficult to attack these grounded Banshees. They can still be attacked, but yeah, as the fighter flies around, it's a lot easier to miss shots and just not get the damage in on them. Autopilot continuing to lay down a lot of pressure here at the top. And XFactor, I mean, he's lost so many expansions. This bottom location, getting taken out so many times, has left him in a very poor position here. And, you know, it, like I was saying, I don't know if it was the last game or the game before that, you know, when you start losing a bunch of territory like that, sorry, hold that thought. Bomber's coming in, looking to deal some damage to, you know, to the wind turbines here. And I think this is more or less just I'm ahead, I can afford to bomb you while I attack you. And this is just going to be another thing for you to deal with. And, you know, meanwhile, you know, for the most part, bombers can just kind of get in and deal some damage at the very least. So just applying that pressure in that way certainly going to help Autopilot out. Just like help to close out this game a little faster. XFactor doing what he can, trying to send these units up, but GG is called. Realizing that there's just too many ground forces for Autopilot here. And XFactor unable to re-expand, unable to you know, produce enough units to stop you know, to take out the infrastructure of Autopilot and trade blows. But yeah, with what I was trying to say before, you know, like I was saying, like in a previous game that's what was I saying? Like when you start losing a bunch of territory, and you know you're getting a little bit low on constructors or resbots and stuff, like you kind of need to make a choice. Like, do I make units, resbots, or cons? And if you need all three, you're kind of in trouble, because every time you choose one, you're not doing one of the other things, and that can certainly hurt a lot. But yeah, we are going to be going into a game 4 here. So yeah, I guess that's XFactor 2 and Autopilot 1. I mean, I suppose XFactor just gets a free loss because he didn't go down in the. I think that's how they have it worked out. So although the score is actually like the score is 2 for XFactor, 1 for Autopilot, but if you think of it as just like, oh, XFactor gets an extra drop game, then the score is actually more 1-to-1. So I think that means that this is the final game between these two players in the grand finals of AlphaCupV. Now, both these players, very extraordinary players. You know, XFactor for a time was at the top of the leaderboard for like everything. He you know, whether it be, I think it was I want to say it was free for all and 1v1s and maybe even like large teams or something. I don't remember exactly, but certainly a very, very good player. Been a good player for a very long time. Autopilot, certainly also a very good player, but a little bit more of a newcomer. Hasn't been around quite as long as XFactor, and you know, just getting into, you know, like started out in a pretty good player, but more recently becoming a substantially good player, able to take out some of the top players of Bar. But yeah, let's get into our fourth and final game here.
Game started.
All right, and we got XFactor spawned at the bottom left as our Blue Armada player. And we have Autopilot spawned at the top left as our Red Armada player. And this is Serelada. On this map, there are really 2 spawn locations. Like if you're XFactor, for example, you could either spawn here or here. Those are the 2 main position someone spawns, taking a different location is seen as not as good, but it can kind of throw your opponent off in terms of scouting and things like that if you decide to do that. Now these positions are a little bit different. The map is rotationally symmetric. So if you think about like where this ridge is on XFactor's side, Autopilot's ridge is over here. So that means the opening to his base is quite large, but it is uphill. And if you're able to secure these 3 mexes and maybe throw down a little bit more defense here, then it's much more challenging to get in the back of to deal damage to Autopilot. But initially he is going to be a little bit more susceptible to attacks coming straight into his base. Meanwhile, XFactor, that big ramp's over here, and that makes it a little bit more challenging because units need to go around to get there. But at the same time, it does leave a secondary smaller gap up to that hill on the left-hand side. So just kind of like 2 different ways to you got to think about defense. But I think this kind of actually helps the defender out quite a bit, because if you put a radar down, the attacker doesn't know which way is going to be a better way to go. You kind of just have to guess because you don't have that vision. But as the defender, you can see exactly what's coming down which lane, and defend them exactly how you need to. But yeah, XFactor, already has a con out expanding, taking these 3 mexes. The mexes are quite large. That's 2.2s on this map, which is above the regular average, but nothing too drastic. But yeah, there is a lot of metal on this map, and wind is quite strong as well. So it is very, it's very much a map where you can have a lot of units out and a lot of, cons out expanding. But yeah, the harass looks pretty good for XFactor so far. Takes out the radar. It looks like, Autopilot able to keep his 2 cons alive for now. XFactor only has the 1 con out, so I think so far this is a good thing for Autopilot, but at the same time, he's kind of using these cons at his base. And maybe he needs to, maybe because he needs more energy with the wind dying down a bit, but, ideally, you kind of want these cons out, taking these mexes. XFactor a bit ahead on the metal income at the moment because of that. So Autopilot just kind of being really careful here, making sure that he's has enough units out to defend as these cons start moving away from the base here. A tick does get in. XFactor's tick coming into the base here. Autopilot, builds a tick of his own to help defend it. And yeah, he's going to be able to take it out before any damage is dealt. So one thing to keep in mind here is these players are in a close position here. It's not like it's across the map. So, early aggression here is certainly a little bit stronger than otherwise. So both players just being really careful with how many units they're spending, or that they're positioning for defense, and how many units they're positioning for attack, with a little bit more emphasis on defense perhaps. But XFactor with the slower second con, just now building that second con, has a lot more units out here now. He's able to maybe pressure as well as defend pretty easily. So lots of pawns going to be out here on the map, and if he's able to to group up these 2 pawns with these 4, that's certainly going to be a nice attacking group in the back of Autopilot's base here. Testing the waters at the front here. Autopilot sees it ahead of time, pushes in here, takes those units out. And yeah, I guess maybe this one guy is going to survive, but yeah, for the most part, a nice play there from Autopilot, just jumping on those units as they move forward. Yeah, XFactor testing the water. Actually, he's going to move up the group of 4 up to the hill here. And this is a challenging thing as the defender in this location, because it's so wide. But as long as you have a radar out to see it coming, you should be able to respond in time, assuming that you have enough units. But yeah, XFactor, let's see, he only has the 1 con out still. What happened to the second con? Oh, I'm sorry, the second con was at the bottom here. I just missed him. It was out of view. But yeah, 2 cons out, expanding now. XFactor choosing, to send one along the bottom here where it's a little bit safer. Yeah, Autopilot here actually has 3 cons out now. So just a bit ahead in terms of all that. So as long as he continues to defend really well, I think he's going to be in a bit of a better position here. Again, I want to stress that this is the final game between these 2 players, and the winner of this is going to be our champion. Of course, the loser is going to be second place. And you know, in case you guys missed it, the losers finals was quite good. That determined our third place winner, which is Blow Deer. But yeah, lots of little engagements here and there. You know, and I think maybe XFactor thinks he's in a better position than he is. But you know, he didn't take out any of those early cons, so you know, Autopilot's certainly going to be in a better financial position. And the longer this goes on without XFactor actually able to deal damage, the better it's going to be for Autopilot. Or maybe he's just like saying, well, I can't really get in there. I don't want to, you know, risk losing those units. Maybe I can come back a little bit later on in the game. But yeah, again, these are close positions, so yeah, there's going to still be a lot of pressure. It's not like the game's just going to stabilize and go into T2 or something at the moment. We're a bit a ways from that. And yeah, this is a big deal. XFactor hasn't noticed. There's a lot of pawns over here, though. Gonna take out this con, even gonna be able to deal damage in the back here. XFactor in a lot of trouble. Yeah, he's losing all of his infrastructure at his base. D-guns are just now going off. But, you know, that's kind of the tricky thing. If you enclose your commander in those wind turbines, the commander can't really just walk around and defend in any amount of time that makes sense. He's trying to do some damage back here. Maybe going to take out this con. So that certainly is helpful. But at the same time, you know, XFactor has lost his position here. Has lost a lot of stuff at his base. Those mechs are gone. He doesn't have a lot of wind turbines either. And XFactor is certainly in a bad position now all of a sudden because he missed those units coming towards his base. 3 more pawns coming in here. Maybe going to seal the deal. We might see a GG here in a moment because Autopilot has not taken anywhere near as much damage as XFactor has. What is XFactor to do in this position? He certainly needs to, you know, remain calm, rebuild his base a bit, you know, get some resbots out to, you know, pick up those units. But at the same time, he desperately needs units. There's lots of pawns out here that he's got to worry about. And at the same time, his production's going to be hampered, unlike Autopilot's. So he's certainly in a very troubling position once again. But yeah, I mean, the bits of damage done on Autopilot, it's like already being reverted in a way as these resbots come out to, you know, pick up the con, pick up the mechs that fell. You know, and XFactor needs to be very careful at this point in time. He needs to, you know, try to maybe deal some damage back to Autopilot if he's going to have any chance at coming back in this game. But at the same time, needs plenty of units to defend with. He needs to be careful with these pawns coming out here. He's got to be careful with the right-hand side, or the left-hand side as well. There's a couple of pawns running around there. You know, moving his resbot in the back to, you know, make sure it doesn't get picked off. Very, very important stuff for XFactor at this moment. But yeah, I wonder how Autopilot's going to choose to end this game. I suppose for now the economy, you know, isn't high enough to transition into something else. You know, electing instead just to continue with the expansions, continuing to outgrow XFactor here, and then maybe eventually working into another lab or something like that. So for now, you know, just kind of being careful not to like lose a bunch of pawns in XFactor's base needlessly, and just take good engagements. You know, an XFactor, you know, needs to be very careful, just like in this position here. You know, sees so many pawns coming forward, needs to get these pawns over here grouped together to deal with this large force coming towards his base. Even some reinforcements coming up on the right-hand side. You're probably going to join up this large group. You know, I think this is also a very strong move I want to point out. I mean, obviously it doesn't really, you know, have that big of an impact in this game, but you know, joining these two armies together, or, you know, feigning an attack here with one and then sending them out on the radar of XFactor. You know, XFactor sees the army move away, so maybe he moves these units away, but then allows these units to come attack. So, you know, there's certainly some tactical things going on here that I don't think, you know, not everyone's going to notice. So I just wanted to point it out a little bit, because it certainly can be a very strong move to kind of just feign like, hey, I'm going to attack here, but actually send them elsewhere. You know, and you see that on radar, so you think my unit's moving away, but then new ones come in and threaten that location. Yeah, certainly some interesting tactical plays, maneuvering going on for Autopilot here. But XFactor being pretty smart about it. Still has some units stationed in that location, but he's got to be really, really careful here with these pawns coming up here. You know, it's decided to build on Centurions to help defend this. They are very slow moving, so you know, these are excellent defending units against things like pawns, but at the same time, they're slow. They can't really be aggressive, or at least not for a while. So, you know, they take so long to go across the map that this should hint to Autopilot that he can expand a little bit more aggressively, can do things like a tech switch into something, you know, that can pose more of a threat later. You know, he's going to have a bit of a window of opportunity to kind of pick and choose what he wants to do with this game, instead of just, you know, adding on the pawns all day. If, you know, not that he can't do that. He can certainly still do that if he wants to. But there are maybe some choices now. All right, he's going to go with an air lab. I feel like this is pretty typical. You know, pawns being as strong as they are with this patch, you know, means that, you know, doing things like blitzes isn't as strong as it used to be. You know, so maybe it's just more worth it to continue with the pawns in terms of a ground force. And so that means it makes more sense to go into an air lab as your second lab. You know, if you're able to apply pressure with the Banshees, you know, especially for a player that's hurting economically, it can be really annoying, really challenging to add on enough anti-air to deal with it. And then you have to factor in as well that it's just so easy to deal some initial damage, regardless of how much, you know, defense is up here. You know, the surprise attack. Looks like it is going to be bombers. Bombers coming out here. So this can be a really nice play on this map, because if you think about how players typically build wind turbines, you know, it's usually on this hill here, and you know, it's kind of crowded. There's not that much space, so people typically put you know, wind turbines a little bit closer together than normal, so bombing runs can be a little bit stronger. But yeah, look at this. We have so many pawns out here from Autopilot. XFactor trying to expand as much as he can, but yeah, unfortunately the con gets picked off there. But yeah, a pretty substantial force here, you know, and actually Autopilot taking a nice engagement there, you know, with the bombers coming in. So let's hold that thought. And yeah, I mean, I don't think this is going to really be like a ton of damage, but like it's certainly going to be enough to like really hurt someone that's already on the back foot. XFactor, you know, has built an air lab, but no fighters quite out yet. So he's just taking a lot of damage. Meanwhile, he does have. Oh, okay. I missed the fact that there was a fighter here from Autopilot, but
Battle
yeah, the
ended.
XFactor trying to just like move his commander around with a heavy transport, gets picked off from a fighter. But yeah, that's certainly a lot of units coming in here from Autopilot as you kind of just seal the deal with those bombers, as well as the, you know, all those fighters coming in there. So you know, very strong moves there from Autopilot, who is now our AlphaCupV champion. So XFactor does bleed. He can go down. You know, and in fact, Autopilot won, you know, he won 3 games and XFactor only won 1. So, you know, that's pretty conclusive in a way that Autopilot, you know, has played a better game for this finals. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed all my casts of the Alpha Cup series. In case you guys haven't seen my other ones, I did do all the games from the winners round 4 and the losers round 6. I started there and worked my way up the tournaments into the grand finals here. So if you want to check out some casts of mine for the quarterfinals or the semifinals, it's all there on my channel, nice and neat in a playlist. So go check it out if you haven't. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hopefully I did a good job with these casts, and hopefully I didn't miss too many things. But yeah, as a mentor, I do a lot of replay analysis type videos as well. So if you're interested in learning about the game, you know, submit something to the Academy chat. You know, maybe I'll pick it up and do a review. Otherwise, there's plenty of other very, very strong mentors that kind of do the same thing, either through videos or text reviews or whatever. So yeah, so the way to do that is, you know, go into the Academy chat in the main Discord, you know, create a thread with your replay in it and ping mentors, and someone will get to it in due time and help you improve the game. So there are things that Bard does to help players improve, with more things on the way. So anyways, that's enough from me. I'll see you guys next time. Again, thanks for watching.